Well, Sean, the Babylon Bee headline: Democrats vow to starve as many food stamp recipients as it takes to get free health care for illegal aliens. that's that's what the Democrats are doing. They're being very open about what they want. They want continuing subsidies for their NGOs, continuing subsidies for Obamacare, continuing subsidies for the flowing of money to illegal aliens. That's what they're after. And I on the show when the Democrats started talking about this SNAP in earnest, I said, think about this: 42 million Americans are reliant on food assistance to eat. And the Democrats, and I said this to the folks, certainly the government can take your taxpayer dollars and feed you, but as the Democrats are showing, they can take your taxpayer dollars and starve you as well. This is a wake-up call to all Americans. When you're relying on the government, yes, they can feed you. They can also take that away as a mechanism to get you to do what they want. And this should be a cautionary tale when we start talking about the aforementioned Obamacare. You want to turn over your medical care and your child's medical care to these people who can turn it off like that if they don't like what you're saying or what you're doing. It's a frightening thought that I'm hoping conservatives will start driving that point home as well.
All right, guys, good Thursday to you. So much to break down. We're at day 30 of the government shutdown. I think the Democrats are going to finally meet their breaking point. I'll explain with the panel in just a minute. President Trump had a big meeting with the Chinese last night, and he is back in the U.S. and trick-or-treating. Anyone who wonders about this guy's energy, I mean, he literally gets off a plane after 6 days in Asia, 3 countries, and says, yeah, I want to entertain a bunch of young kids for Halloween. We don't need to worry about his mental and physical acuity. No, not this president. Anyway, before I get into it with our amazing panel, tomorrow Michael Knowles joins. And then next week, we're just going to continue it. It's going to be amazing. Victor Davis Hanson's here. Jim McLaughlin's going to break down all the latest polls ahead of Election Day. And Congressman Chairman Jim Jordan is here as well. Big thank you to everybody who is going over and subscribing cross-platform. If you're an audio person, join the video people. Go over to YouTube and Rumble, X, sign up there, watch the show. Same thing. You video people, go to Spotify and Apple. Just always good having a backup. Maybe you're at the gym, you take a long walk. You never know. Plus, all that censorship with big tech, you got to have a backup plan. You never want to miss it. Before I bring in the panel, though, you guys know if you are on a journey of wellness, you'll hear the same thing if you talk to a healthcare professional. Eat slower, walk after meals, avoid processed food. I try to follow that and still don't always feel truly balanced. Then I discovered colostrum. It's nature's liquid gold. It's the first milk that babies actually get, packed with protein, growth factors, and peptides that support reducing inflammation and help healing your gut lining. There's a brand, though, that's at the top, Cowboy Colostrum. It offers the highest quality bovine colostrum in the U.S., sourced from first milking of 100% grass-fed cows. It's full fat, never over-processed. You get maximum nutrients and real results. It is unbelievable, and you can choose between chocolate, strawberry, or vanilla. For a limited time, our listeners, yeah, that's you, 25% off your entire order. Just go to Cowboy Colostrum, and if you're a bad speller, that's Cowboy, COLOSTRUM.com/Sean. Use code Sean, spelled the right way, SEAN, and you get 25% off. After that purchase, they're going to ask you where you bought it. You're going to say Sean, of course. So go to cowboycolostrum.com/Sean. One last guy to tell you about before I bring in our amazing group of panelists. You know who I'm talking about, my buddy Leo Grillo at Delta Rescue. What started off as rescuing one dog, a Doberman, this guy has turned into an amazing Asian passion project. Delta Rescue. Go to deltarescue.org. Check out the videos, because I've told you guys this. If you're a longtime listener of the show, you know, I said, oh, Leo, when I first met him, I've rescued 3 dogs. He's like, that's great, Sean. I don't rescue dogs. I take care of them for life. Delta Rescue is the world's largest no-kill sanctuary for life. If you're an animal lover, dogs, cats, horses, you name it, Delta Rescue is something you're going to fall in love with, because what they do is take care of malnutrition, abandoned, abused, all sorts of animals for life. But there's no USAID grants, political pro subscriptions. This is all donations from people like me and you. And I stepped up. I made a personal contribution. I would ask you to do the same. Please go to deltarescue.org to contribute to the great work there. And if you're feeling so inclined, check out that estate planning kit to help make it an enduring mission. You might have an old 401k or a stock that your tax advisor could tell you about a personal financial benefit in the short term. Go to deltarescue.org. All right, let's bring in the panel and break it all down. Our correspondent, who was at the TPUSA rally last night from the Daily Caller, Reagan Reese, Emily Sturge, who's an independent journalist and a member of the Campus Reform reporting team there. And then my old colleague and buddy and brand new author, Mr. Chris Salcedo, The Liberty-Loving Latino, which just happens to be the title of his forthcoming book. Chris, he's the host of the Chris Salcedo Show down there in Texas. Chris, congrats on the new book. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And it's obviously available for pre-order on Amazon, Liberty-Loving Latino. It's not just a tagline. It's now a book. Congrats.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. I want to start off before, Reagan, you were with the VP at that TPUSA rally. I want to talk about that and the impact that rally had and what you saw inside. But before I do, let's just start with the trip. President Trump, 6 days in Asia, 3 countries. Chris Salcedo, he says, I want you to, he's on the plane flying home, and they get asked, of course, how was the meeting with President Xi? Because that was the piece de resistance. Like 3 days of meetings, but everyone said, I want to see how this China meeting goes. This is what he had to say.
But overall, I guess on the scale of from 0 to 10, with 10 being the best, I would say the meeting was a 12. Okay, I think it was a 12. I think very importantly, just the whole relationship is very, very important. And I think it was really good.
And especially coming on the heels of the successful trip. We're in Malaysia. You signed a peace deal for Cambodia and Thailand. Critical mineral deals with all our allies.
So many successful meetings.
Right?
And so many meetings great for our country with literally hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars have come into our country over the last 4 days, represented by this meeting. But trillions of dollars, where Toyota is going to build plants, $10 billion worth of plants. And, I could go over so many different companies coming in. They're pouring money into the United States.
All right, Chris Salcedo, I've seen a lot of presidents take a lot of foreign trips. Give me your impression of this one.
It was a good one, and it's a one that was in a long string of successful trips. I mean, President Trump doesn't take unsuccessful trips. I mean, just listen to him. I mean, he will tell you it was on a scale of 1 to 10. It's a 12. President Trump, unlike past presidents, though, seems to deliver $1 trillion worth of investment into the United States. And I think the way they structured it was brilliant, getting some of these deals done with Japan, with South Korea, and then wrapping things up with the dictator of China, Xi Jinping, basically telegraphing to China, hey, we really don't need you, but if you want to come along, it's all well and good. I'm hearing rumblings that Xi Jinping is in trouble at home because he's being strong-armed by the American president, which is appropriate, in my opinion. That should be the fate of all communists. But I think the president is delivering everything he said he was going to do, which is an America First agenda on full display for everybody to see.
Emily, the thing that was so interesting to Chris's point is I've watched a lot of these presidents go on foreign trips, and they have a meeting and they sign normally like they sign a communique. So they'll go to the APEC summit like he did, ASEAN, G10, G8, whatever. And they'll be like, we agree that we will continue to fight for clean air and world peace and whatever. This guy comes back and is like, I got this deal. I got that deal. This guy's going to invest. We got that. I mean, to me, there was no like gobbledygook. It was, here are real deliverables that are going to benefit real Americans.
The businessman is doing what he does best. But let's zoom out. Isn't it nice to have a president who's actually awake right now? And I think back to a year ago on the campaign trail, Kamala Harris, this time last year, was questioning Donald Trump's energy, saying that he didn't have the energy to be in office for another 4 years. And now that we're here, we can look back and absolutely laugh. And during that time, on the campaign trail, I just think back to, we saw President Trump working at McDonald's. We saw him in the garbage truck. All of these iconic moments, constantly talking to members of the media. He was in a different state every day. He was surveying damage from Hurricane Helene, talking to people in North Carolina. All of the energy we saw from the campaign trail, we are now seeing in office. He has secured peace in the Middle East, all of these fantastic trade deals now with these Asian countries. I don't think America is shocked. I think America got exactly what they voted for, and it seems like everyone's pretty happy.
Yeah, I honestly, I get tired listening to him.
Me too.
And I'm like, he's 79 years old. He's running around. I honestly, to your point about Kamala Harris, I was like, this guy literally is landing after all of those meetings. And then he's greeting children at the White House, which I was like, that's when you take a pass and you go, hey, Mrs. First Lady, could you go out and do that for me? Reagan, I want to move over to you and the exhaustion of the VP, because you guys went down to Mississippi, gave the speech, and I was watching it, and literally I was like, okay, I need him to wrap up because I want to go to bed. And then I know you guys had to go to the plane, get back, land, get back from Andrews. Tell me a little bit about give us some insight into your travels, your experience with the vice president going to that Turning Point USA rally last night.
Well, first on President Trump and his stamina, I just want to say it's exhausting covering him. And I had the opportunity to interview the president at the end of August. And I asked him, how do you do it? How do you have the stamina? Because that was coming off. It was just a couple of days after that marathon long cabinet meeting, which was 3 hours and 17 minutes. And I asked him, how do you have the strength to do this? And he told me he has good genes, good parents. And then he was very invested in whether I had good parents and good genes and whether I was going to have the same stamina throughout my life as the president had. So it's just a fun anecdote about the president. I love to tell.
How did you answer it when he said, do you have good, did you say like, well, I like Sydney Sweeney, I have good genes?
Wow.
I was like, I hope so. And then he started asking me about my parents and if they were alive and what they do. And my parents are big Trump supporters. And I told President Trump that they're in their late 50s. And he was like, they're old. And I was like, they were devastated to hear that. It was just funny Donald Trump moments like that. The trip to Ole Miss. This was really a remarkable trip. It's always remarkable to travel with the administration, but yesterday was 7 weeks to the day since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Wow. And Erica Kirk came out. It was, her first time appearing at this college campus tour that TPUSA is trying to continue. And she was wearing that freedom shirt, that shirt that Charlie was wearing when he was shot. And she came out and spoke to 10,000 students that were packed in this arena. They had to turn away more students. When she spoke, Sean, the students remained standing, every single student, the entire time. She spoke for 30 minutes. It was dead silent in that room. They were hanging on her every word, and they played this very emotional video ahead of her taking the stage, and it's Charlie introducing Erica, and that's how they introduce her onto the stage. And, she was emotional. She was wiping away her tears. And it was so silent. Everyone's hanging on every word. And I could feel, I wrote my story this morning and I was emotional, reliving this moment. And a student yells out, "We love you." And everyone started yelling out, "Then we love you." And she said, "I love you guys." And last night was a beautiful moment between honoring Charlie and talking about his legacy and also calling on these students to mobilize, to be bold in their faith. And the vice president, of course, was the main attraction. It was his job to do what Charlie always did on these campuses, to sit down and take questions from these students. And the line of students that wanted to ask him questions wrapped around the inside of the stadium, and he wanted to get to as many as possible, and he did. We were an hour and a half late getting back to Washington, D.C. Than we were scheduled to, and I thought he did a really great job. I think there's been a ton of discourse this morning about just what a great orator he is, and there was a 48 chant that broke out after his remarks, which I think also speaks to how people are viewing J.D. Vance right now. I know that's a very intriguing conversation for many people.
All right, Chris Salcedo, you're doing the ooh and the ahs. I watched that last night and I thought to myself, this guy's got it. Like, yes. It is like, it's not even like at some point you would be wasting your money to challenge him. Meaning the presence that he had, the back and forth, the dialogue, and it wasn't like when you have you do this, Chris Salcedo, you're on a radio all the time. You've got guests, you have politicians, and they're like, "Chris, I'm fighting hard for the American people." And like, you can tell it's talking points and BS. When I was listening to JD last night, I felt like I was in the room having a conversation with the guy. He was that good.
Well, it is something that we would all classify as something that's genuine, a genuine human being or a politician, right? And we've been treated to this packaged, polished presentation by so many, regardless of your political affiliation, for so many decades. And then to see somebody say it like it is, to actually get rid of all the political speak. J.D. Vance, the president, Marco Rubio showing me something in recent years because of his affiliation with the America First coalition. RFK Jr. It's refreshing because they're trying to meet us where we are, where we live. And I think it's a stark contrast to what we saw yesterday. I don't know if you guys were following this, but I led with the radio show this morning. My jaw's on the floor, and we're starting to realize the full scope of what has transpired here in the last regime. We started out with, it was 8 Republican senators targeted. By the way, we're up to 160 Republicans now who have been targeted by an investigation by the corrupt FBI. By the way, with no probable cause. And then Catherine Herridge starts weighing in. No, it's actually closer to 430 Republicans and lawmakers and anybody associated with Trump or supporting President Trump, which including news organizations like Fox News Channel with Newsmax. The net was so wide. And I'm watching these senators, and you all know who they are, so I don't need to name names. Talking about, this is we're pledging to get to the bottom of this. Get to the bottom of this. You have a document in your hand that shows that Judge Boasberg authorized basically a Soviet style, hey, show me the man and I'll show you the crime style investigation, air quotes. And everybody seems to be, let's go through the proper protocol and all this nonsense. And it's like, you just get the sense there's a group of individuals up there who are America first, who understand what's at stake, where the Democrat Party has devolved into. And then there are those who are dedicated basically to not seeing anything. We need to go through more investigations. Yes, that's precisely what we need. More investigations so we can run out the clock and maybe we might change administrations and the Democrats can get off from what they've done to this country and so many people. It's insanity to me. And I think it's what we've just been detailing, the difference between something that's real and something that is designed to just pull the wool over the American people's eyes. And I think our people are tired of it, finally.
Sean, could I add one more thing on Vance's remarks? I also want to just add that the questions he took from the students, all these kids had these MAGA hats on, we're supporters probably of TPUSA, most of them, but the questions that the vice president took were not easy questions. He was asked about what it's like marrying a Hindu woman and trying to raise his kids as Christian and how they balance that. And also, do you have to be Christian to follow the conservative movement? And why does it seem like the conservative movement is doing that? He was asked about the administration's position on Israel, which I think is very important to young Republicans right now. And he was even asked about his abortion stance. And the students felt like he had changed his stance on abortion. And there were just so many questions that were hostile. And I think that's what makes Vance's moment last night, the way he responded to all these questions effectively. He was asked about the president trying to primary Thomas Massie and why they would turn on one of their own. And I think he handled them all with poise and swiftness. And those questions that's an important element of just what we saw from the vice president last night, because it wasn't just a bunch of TPUSA MAGA students asking the vice president why he was awesome. They were challenging him in typical, Charlie Kirk fashion. It was really, really something to watch.
Emily, if you had gotten a chance to ask a question of the vice president last night, you're around a lot of college students, either something that you would have asked or something that you think is on the minds of college students that you talk to and interact with. What would you have asked?
Okay, that's a great question. First, I want to piggyback off what Reagan is saying. I thought that was the most remarkable part of last night. The vice president asked for students who disagree with him to come ask him questions. And then you look at the line of students, there was a lot of students in MAGA hats. And that to me is proof that Generation Z is a generation of free thinkers. Now, the question that a lot of Gen Zers have on their minds, a lot of Gen Zers are very America first. That's why we saw so many questions about Israel. When I talk to Gen Zers, that's what's on the minds of a lot of them. I also want to point out, I was appreciative that Erica Kirk took the time to thank two fantastic governors who have been investing energy and resources into furthering the Turning Point USA movement. Erica took took the time to thank Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who announced earlier this week that the state of Florida is partnering with Turning Point USA to launch high school chapters across the state. I'm a Florida girl. I was so excited to hear that. She also thanked Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, who pledged $100,000 to launch chapters throughout Virginia. Now, those are two states that their education system prioritizes American values, the First Amendment, law and order. So I think those initiatives from those governors speak to the success of their education system. That's why we see students in Florida perform so much better on civics tests. They have much more civics knowledge down in the Sunshine State than in other states because they have an education system that prioritizes it. And I'm hoping that we have 48 other governors who possibly could follow suit with some of these initiatives.
I want to pivot to another story that, with everything else, probably didn't get as much national attention. But Riley Gaines and AOC got into a little back and forth. And I want to play you the clip that kind of started this, where Riley Gaines, as you folks might remember, she was the swimmer that lost, quote unquote, and I literally use quotes in that, to a man. And so I want to play you this clip that kind of kicked it all off as far as I know. Here we go.
Here's what I will say. I want to honestly challenge AOC to a debate. She can defend socialism. I will defend capitalism. She can defend removing God. I will defend embracing a biblical worldview. She can defend child sacrifice. I will defend the sanctity of life. Any of the radical, insane democratic policies and platform that they stand for, I will debate the opposite. I'm challenging AOC to it here.
Okay, so Chris Salcedo.
Yeah.
What I love is this is the perfect segue from Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk. Engaging in debate, saying, hey, I don't want to, I'm not going to name call you. I'm not going to call you all the things that we could call AOC. And she probably deserves most of them. But it's, hey, I want to engage in a debate with you about different approaches to government. And what does AOC respond with? She says to Riley Gaines, and I would like to challenge this person to get a real job. Interesting, huh? To which Riley responded, I have a real job. I'm a mom. And it's the most rewarding and important. It's the most important and rewarding job in the world. I think if you had a baby girl like I do, you'd understand my positions a little better.
Wow. Well, you know what? And then AOC would go on to say, if you would channel your energy into swimming, or if you had channeled your energy, your hatred, I think was the word she used, into swimming, maybe you wouldn't have come in fifth. That's what AOC said in response to Riley Gaines, who has been rightly pointing out that men do not belong in women's sports. But this is the mindset of the loudmouth leftist Latina who is AOC. That, by the way, she is a contrast to we liberty-loving Latinos, those who believe in left-wing extremism and totalitarian government rule. That's the contrast. That's the debate. It's, you already mentioned the book, so I'm okay in touting liberty-loving Latino. But this is what Democrats do. If you oppose them and their policies, they want to classify you as somehow hateful. This is the case that I just mentioned about the targeting of Republicans in the elected ranks and in our country because they dared oppose Democrats. That's their crime. That is your crime in the United States of America that they tried to solidify, opposing left-wingers. I think Riley Gaines is doing it the right way, supporting debate, promoting debate, and then showing how thin the veneer is on the Democrat side. They really have no claim to intelligence or any rational thought whatsoever. It's just proclaiming anybody who opposes them as quote unquote hateful. This is how they win debates on the Democrat side. This is why I have such high hopes as a Gen Xer for what's happening in Gen Z. Thinkers, individuals who are questioning the orthodoxy, because it's not good enough anymore just to declare your opponents, oh, you're a racist, and then all of a sudden you win any political debate. That's no longer good enough, in particular for Gen Z. Again, it gives me so much hope, and I think Riley Gaines, one of the individuals leading the charge.
Reagan, why didn't this, is it just a busy news week? But I felt like this actually could have gotten, on any other week, probably a little bit more attention.
Well, I'm sure it's on the Daily Caller website because this is certainly something we would give attention to. You know, maybe people are over AOC's games and I gave this speech 2 weeks ago at the University of Berkeley. I was asked to lecture students on what the State of the Union was. And I said it wasn't great. And I felt really scared and troubled about the state of our nation after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And then I told the students, but there's hope. And here's what we can do. We should be having conversations like this instead of firing off these mean tweets or quote retweeting each other with some snarky response. We should sit down and have conversations. You should log off. You should put the phone down. You should look each other's in the eyes. And one of the things I love about my job is that everyone I write about, whether it's positive or negative, I eventually at some point will have to look in the eyes. And it's a lot harder to say something negative and mean and snarky about someone when you come face to face with them and you realize they're human, just like you. As no matter how evil or bad you think they are, like AOC, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, what have you. And so, I think Riley challenging AOC to a debate is great. They should just sit down and have a meeting. I think that would be even better. They should go for a coffee. They should have some girl time and just realize, they are at the end of the day, both two women who are involved in politics. And I think that would be so good for our nation, but instead AOC is resigning herself to snarky quote retweets, and I wouldn't expect anything less from her.
Emily, the thing that's so interesting about Reagan's proposition there is I'm of the same vein. I love to debate issues. You want if AOC or Eric Swalwell or any of these other nut jobs want to sit down, I would be respectful of them. I believe we have better ideas. I would be glad to engage with anybody because I think that the conservative, whether it's social or fiscal policies, are better for communities and for the country. So I want to do that more because I think that I believe somehow we could win them over or we can expose them. But you see this on college campuses and I don't actually think they want to do it because I think they know that.
Well, it's hard to debate when you don't have truth on your side. It's hard to debate when you don't have biological reality on your side. And that's exactly why we see the left resort to mocking the messenger and name calling. And yes, absolutely. This is how we see conservatives treated on college campuses. In fact, I would say that the AOC Riley Gaines feud, if you will, is perfectly symbolic of what it feels like to be a young conservative woman. Whether it's on your college campus or on social media, it feels like you're the one lone sane common sense voice versus this world of out of touch leftism.
Yes.
The difference is Riley Gaines is grounded in truth. It also reveals this great dichotomy of what feminism claims to be versus what it actually is. Okay. AOC is this performative feminist. She's loud. She drives headlines. She rages all these emotions on Twitter versus Riley Gaines' brand is that she's actually fighting for women's safety, women's privacy. The left has attacked President Trump for so many years, calling him so anti-woman. Yet that's the president that we've seen so many positive changes for women. Women's bathrooms, women's locker rooms, women's safe spaces are now back to being women's spaces. We've seen such positive changes under this administration. I think back to, I reported at the Leadership Institute's campus reform when UPenn sending out these apology letters, apologizing to people, all of the female athletes who were affected by having to compete with male athletes, having to face men in the locker room. I look forward to seeing this administration push for trophies and medals to go back to the women that they belong to. And once again, Riley Gaines is the one driving that change while AOC is claiming to be this female change maker. It's very clear who is the real champion for women's values here.
Well, guys, isn't that though the basic fundamental premise of this discussion we're having? The ideas, I've been classifying it as America first versus America last. Maybe there's a broader description of this: individuals who want to breathe free, individuals who want to enslave. This is a debate, time immemorial, a conflict, time immemorial of humankind. And I think the exercise and everything you were just saying, Emily, about what the other side is trying to get us to accept. They want us to accept fantasy. It's a relentless beatdown. Accept our fantasy. Men can be women, women can be men can have babies. Accept it. And they're drilling it down into our children. And if you don't, you're somehow ostracized. You can't make a living. You can't go to school. You can't get a job. And this is the big debate we're having. And the idea, I would love to be able to sit down with a left winger, but I'm finding increasingly I have very little in common as an American with so many people on the left because their demands are, let's start with, I'm right and anything that you're saying is wrong. And that's where we start. And there is no debate anymore, is there?
You're
I
absolutely
totally agree.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was going to say, no, you're good. I think that one thing I've thought a lot about after Charlie Kirk's murder was, where do we go from here? And I think one thing conservatives can do, and this is something I've talked to the students at Berkeley about, is you should just, if you disagree with someone, ask them why. And then you should push back and you should slowly and maybe boldly and maybe not slowly, but quickly. I think conservatives need to be more bold and really everybody about what they believe and just exposing each other to disagreements and being able to have civil disagreements again could be really healing for our nation too. That's why I really think social media and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and whatever is so detrimental, because you can just fire off a comment. You don't have to look at this person and you're not exposed. You're not used to seeing a conservative in person or having conversations with them. It's not, it's just not normal. And so, if someone says something to you at the coffee shop, the barista makes some snarky comment about the cross where you have across your neck, say something back, be polite, be civil, expose that barista to a different point of view or whoever it is in America. I think that can be a really good thing for our nation, even if you can't get that leftist to sit down with you.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because Chris is right. Like, part of when you sit down with a discussion with someone and they go, a man can be a woman. You're like, okay, that's just, I can't, what do you want me to say here? Like, that's just not biologically true. And so I don't know where to go from there, being like, yes, and aliens are coming into, but it's kind of an interesting segue because we're at day 30 of the government shutdown. And Chris Salcedo, you're down there in Texas, and one of your favorite Texans, she had something very interesting to say about President Trump and where we are in this process. So let me play this clip from Chris Salcedo's favorite Texan, Jasmine Crockett. Take a listen.
They are disrespecting all federal workers in this moment. So is it a surprise to me when they're not getting paid that they could care less? Absolutely not. They found money for ICE, but they act like they can't find money for anybody else.
Chris, this is again, like, no, you guys are actually voting no. Like, this is, again, where I don't get the cognitive dissonance right there. It's like, you're voting no, and then you're blaming us or our side for not paying the people that you voted no to.
Salcedo show axiom number 5 states leftists lie. They always lie. And this is their stock in trade. Yes, men can have babies. And yes, it's all the Republicans' fault, the reason why the government is shut down. You would have to be completely ignorant of the filibuster rule in the United States Senate. You have to be completely ignorant of who is voting for what to actually believe this stuff. The good news is all the polling I'm seeing from CNN to other left-wing outlets, the American people know and understand who has shut down the government this time and the ones who are not voting to reopen the government. And I want to be plain. I'm not very excited about continuing overspending levels at unacceptable, unsustainable, existential threats that this overspending levels of the Democrat Party represent. That's exactly what they're going to be voting on this 7-week CR. This is more continued unacceptable left-wing Democrat overspending. Yes, but let's all be plain and true about who is responsible for not continuing that massive overspending and shutting down the government. It is Democrats, Senate Democrats, and thank goodness the American people are wise enough at this point to know what's really going on.
Reagan, there's a new talking point from the Democrats. There's always a key word that they use in each of these debates. And usually, and then the media just picks it up and everybody uses it. But I want to play you a clip of this Congressman, Josh Harder. He's from California, using the new word that every one of the Democrats, if you listen to what they say, somehow they work this in. Take a listen.
Why not take that route?
I think the idea that
you would give up all of your leverage and then hopefully get some sort of great deal coming down the pike is just a fool's errand.
So the new word is leverage. And what they don't want to open the government because they'll lose their leverage. Now, this goes back to the Jasmine Crockett clip where she blaming everyone, but they'll admit they use it over and over again. They all say the same thing. We don't want to give up our leverage. So that's why they voted against allowing active duty service members to get paid and essential workers, because they'll give up their leverage. This is a negotiation for them. They don't, her concern about federal workers is not true. They admit that you want leverage.
Yeah, well, I also think they're talking about, when they talk about leverage, they're talking about the suffering of the American people. And they want to use that to pressure the Republicans to try to bend on this continuing resolution, which I just do not think is going to happen. I think from the sources I've been talking to that Republicans are going to stay firm and that they are waiting for Democrats to bend, and that Democrats can continue to weaponize the suffering of American people against the GOP, but I think it's going to backfire on them. And we talk about this messaging war right now. Whose fault is it for the government shutdown? Is it the GOP because they're in control of the House and the Senate, or is it the Democrats because they're voting against a clean continuing resolution like they did many times during the Biden administration? And that's kind of the point we're at right now. I reported earlier this week that Independent Women sent a letter to Jeffries and Schumer with testimonies from average Americans. They had 800 Americans reach out to them and tell them how they're being affected by the government shutdown. Not only did they send all 800 names to Schumer and Jeffries, but they also included some of the stories that they're telling. And these were stories from military families who aren't going to be able to pay rent, who might lose their house, who can't buy groceries, who are very scared right now because they are not getting paid. And even within Washington, D.C., you're starting to hear that from federal workers. We all know someone who's in the administration who has to ask their landlord for an extension on rent because they can't pay it this month, or is getting worried about not being able to pay those groceries. And so when the Democrats are talking about using the American people as a pawn or leverage, when they're talking about leverage, this is what they mean.
Emily, I think so today's the 30th, tomorrow's 31st. November 1st is when these SNAP benefits, these low income food nutrition assistance benefits come. And there's two things that are going to happen, I think. One is obviously, to Reagan's point, a lot of Americans are going to deal with how to pay for food, right? They get these benefits. There's obviously some fraud in it, and I know that's a whole separate subject. But there's also this thing going around. I see it now on some of the videos that people send me, where there's a bunch of people that are saying that they're just going to start stealing.
Yep.
And so what I wonder, Emily, is this November 1st, SNAP benefits run out. A bunch of people are going to get really hungry really quick. And two, a bunch of people I think are going to unfortunately riot or steal or whatever you want to, is this going to be the turning point, November 1st?
I hope we see the government reopen, because I've seen those videos on TikTok of people saying that they're planning to riot, to go out in the streets, to rob stores. It makes me think of the Black Lives Matter riots. And, that's a really scary image to think about. I really hope that Democrats do the right thing here. I want to touch on something that Reagan brought up, and that's, we all know somebody in the administration who's been impacted by this government shutdown. Right now in Washington, D.C., there are hundreds, if not thousands, of young conservatives who have moved to Washington, D.C. to serve this administration in some capacity. I've talked to young people who just moved to Washington, D.C. They're now working for the administration. They came to Washington, D.C. with all of their savings, and now they don't know how they're going to pay their rent. This is affecting a lot of young conservatives right now. And then Chris brought up a fantastic point that I agree. I think the American people know who is driving the shutdown, that it's the Democrats. But I think more than that, I think the American people see where the Democrats' priorities are right now. Just a couple days after the government shut down, I was having what I thought was a serious conversation with a leftist, trying to talk about why the government shut down. But the conversation spiraled into that leftist getting upset and saying that the administration administration instead was focusing on the sombrero meme of Hakeem Jeffries and making this into some racist conversation. So
Wow.
while conservatives are trying to have a serious conversation and support American families, the left focused on the Hakeem Jeffries meme, focused on crying and saying that the administration, had that racist meme. And then the left is also freaking out over renovations to the White House. So more than anything, I think the American people can see the priorities of both parties in this conversation.
Well, Sean, the Babylon Bee headline: Democrats vow to starve as many food stamp recipients as it takes to get free health care for illegal aliens. That's what the Democrats are doing. They're being very open about what they want. They want continuing subsidies for their NGOs, continuing subsidies for Obamacare, continuing subsidies for the flowing of money to illegal aliens. That's what they're after. And I, on the show, when the Democrats started talking about this SNAP in earnest, I said, think about this. 42 million Americans are reliant on food assistance to eat. And the Democrats, and I said this to the folks, certainly the government can take your taxpayer dollars and feed you. But as the Democrats are showing, they can take your taxpayer dollars and starve you as well. This is a wake-up call to all Americans. When you're relying on the government, yes, they can feed you. They can also take that away as a mechanism to get you to do what they want. And this should be a cautionary tale when we start talking about the aforementioned Obamacare. You want to turn over your medical care and your child's medical care to these people who can turn it off like that if they don't like what you're saying or what you're doing? It's a frightening thought that I'm hoping conservatives will start driving that point home as well.
Love that point. And also, Chris, I think when you stop and realize, what do we have, a country of 300 million, call it 42 something. So that's like a sixth-ish of all Americans. That's to the broader point that Donald Trump's fighting for. The idea that we're not creating more American jobs at a decent wage that can pay for that is also a bigger issue that should be setting off light bulbs going, isn't that the bigger issue? To your point, how many people are dependent on government and why they are? Because we've shipped so many jobs overseas and we haven't done. I think there's actually sometimes you miss the bigger message. Why are we doing this? What's the bigger message here?
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I was going to tee it up to the young ladies on the panel, because look, you got 42 million people relying on the government to eat. You've got countless millions others who are relying on these subsidies to afford quote unquote health care, such as it is these days. I mean, this is where the Democrats are unabashedly maneuvering this country to and again, it's Soviet-esque, it's China-esque. It is a point to where the government is controlling everything you do, see, hear, and partake in. And to a Gen Xer who came up as a Reagan baby, this scares the hell out of me. I don't know how the younger generations are processing this.
Right. All right. Before I get to winners and losers, I'm going to ask one simple question. I want a date. When does the government reopen Reagan Reese?
I think that there's potential for a temporary solution within maybe the next week or so. But
give me a date.
In terms of actually opening, November 12th.
Okay. Emily?
I mean, I hope, for the sake of the American people, I hope at some point in November. But really, I think this is going to be a record breaker here.
Okay. Chris Salcedo.
Just before Thanksgiving,
boom.
Yep.
That's right. Yep. You cannot have Thanksgiving if you're a lawmaker sitting home with your turkey and everything while millions of people are out there. So I'm with Salcedo on this. All right, let's get to winners and losers real quick. Reagan Reese, kick us off. Who do you think won the week? Who lost the week?
The winners are the students who disagreed with J.D. Vance, who got the opportunity to ask him a question, to debate him on issues, and hopefully have their minds changed. Loser, I mean, come on, let's give this more attention. AOC.
Oh, good call. Good call. Emily Sturge, tell me who you think had a really good week and who had a bad week.
I agree. I think AOC is the loser. I think she should have learned from Simone Biles that you don't go after Riley Gaines, because the country is on the side of Riley Gaines. Now, my winner for the week is a big prediction. I hope that the Los Angeles Dodgers pull through.
I've never rooted for the Dodgers, but I can't let a Canadian team win the World Series.
I feel the same.
Anti-American to root against the Dodgers. I hope our Dodgers pull through.
Okay. You're getting it by default. If it was any other team, I don't know. Chris Salcedo, who won the week, who lost the week?
Winner of the week, I think, is the America First coalition in the Trump administration, and by extension, us, as they inked even more America First trade deals, which we're going to start to see an avalanche of benefits coming, praise God, in the next 2 to 3 years. I think the loser is also the American people, as we have witnessed the scope, the size and the scope of what the Democrats actually tried to do with the judiciary, with those inside of the executive branch, and all three branches, legislative, executive, and judicial, to undertake a tyranny against the United States, to criminalize opposing them. I think our people were the real losers, as we're just starting to now see the full scope of what they did.
Interesting. So normally by the time I go, everyone's taking my ideas. So I always have a backup. And I was definitely going with Donald Trump to kind of draft off of what Chris Salcedo said. I was like, he redefined what a successful foreign policy trip looks like. Because that was win, 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 win. So because I thought it would be taken, I chose J.D. Vance because of exactly what Reagan described last night at that thing. It was remarkable what he did and how he handled himself, exactly as Reagan described. I thought that what people miss is that, yeah, they were standing there with MAGA hat, but they were like, hey, I don't agree entirely with your immigration policy. The part about Tom Massey came up. I was like, he really walked through it in just such a personal way. I thought, again, for all the people last August who were like, when he got picked, were like, I don't know about this guy. I was like, dude, you have no idea. He's about to do political jiu-jitsu in front of you. My loser of the week, I have a 3-prong loser. Again, I plan because I always feel like they're going to get taken. Number one, the people who got pardoned by Biden. I heard John Solomon on my show earlier this week. If you got a Biden pardon, you might want to call your lawyer because it's going to be an issue. Number two, the dum-dums that robbed the Louvre. I mean, seriously, how do you not wear gloves if you're going to plan a massive jewel heist? What were you thinking? I was talking to my son this morning. I'm like, they got caught because of their DNA. Wear a hat, you dummies. Like, I think that. And then Chris Salcedo, you've got a brand new book coming out. Just as a reminder, it's coming out in November. It's called The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, A New American Revolution. I'm warning you now, Chris Salcedo. And that's why I'm trying to get people, go to Amazon, get pre-order in the queue to pre-order Chris's book, because my third loser of the week was Corinne Jean-Pierre. I mean, breaking the top 25,000 of book sales. Sorry, that's a good one. That's embarrassing. I mean, honestly, I say that as a guy who's done 4 books. Like, you better put a marketing plan together, because when you're the former press secretary and you can't break the top 25,000, I mean, that's not having a good week, and it doesn't say much for your future. Anyway, good to see you all. Thanks for an amazing discussion. As I said, tomorrow, guys, Michael Knowles, he just testified in front of the Senate on political violence and speech. He's going to break it all down for us tomorrow on the show. Then next week, Jim McLaughlin ahead of the elections, Victor Davis Hanson. So much going on the show. Hit that subscribe and notification button. Thanks for being with us. Always see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.